Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Stephen from Steagle. I'm the technical director there. We've been using AppSheet now for a good few years, and it's revolutionized our business. And so we develop a lot of AppSheet apps for others as well. And so the previous one, we just did an intro to AppSheet, and people were saying, can you show us what AppScript, what it can do within AppSheet to help you make your apps, just take them to the next level. And so I'm going to do a live demo, which means it's going to fail at some point, and hopefully we'll be able to show you what you can get out of it. And so it doesn't matter if you record the previous demo or not. What we made is just a little project tracker. Here it looks like in the desktop view. You've got basically a project. You can see some things about it. It's got a start date and end date. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add some pieces to it, which are useful, and show you how you can use AppSheet along with AppScript to enhance them a bit further. So the first thing, we've got a project. Probably one of the more useful things would be to actually have some project files. So we need to make a folder to put them in. AppSheet itself has no concept of folders, but obviously Google Drive does. And so we're going to utilize that with AppScript. And so what we'll do first of all is in the project, we're going to add to the actual Google Sheet that the project is in. We're going to add to the projects sheet. We're going to stick in there a new column for the folder ID that Google Drive is going to give us. And so we can add that in there. So we've now got a folder ID column. AppSheet needs to know that exists, so we can go and regenerate that column, and that'll get generated inside this AppSheet table. And of course, there's the folder ID there. We just want it to be text. We don't need it to be anything more clever than that. But what we do want eventually is the ability to link to the Google Drive folder. And so we'll add a virtual column in to make that happen for us. So what we're going to do is we'll call the virtual column, we'll call that the folder URL. Now I'll come back and explain this long-winded formula I'm going to put in here, but basically this is constructing for us the URL. You can see there choosing the drive open URL with the folder ID, and we're using it as a hyperlink so you can actually get a nice name for it rather than a link. And the rest I'll come back and explain. If I don't come back and explain it, somebody remind me. I'm sure you'll want to know what it was all meaning. We'll come back to it. We need that to be a URL, so we'll set that to be a URL. We're also going to use the ability to launch externally. That means it'll open a new browser tab for you instead of taking you outside of the app. And it's a hyperlink. It's going to have that nice text to click on rather than just be a URL. And then finally, we'll give it a nice name in the app so you can see it a bit nicer than folder URL. We'll call it the project folder. So that goes into display name. So that's AppSheet now set up, ready to have the data. So we'll save that. The next thing we need to do is make sure that AppSheet can show you that data. So we'll go over to the views. In the views, we'll go to the project details. And in project details, we will add in at the top that new folder URL. So you'll be able to see it. There we go, folder URL. And as you can see in the app preview, it's not there at the minute because nothing has a folder URL, therefore AppSheet doesn't show you anything. So the next step is when we make a new app, we want to then get AppSheet to invoke AppScript and automatically make that folder for us. So what we do that is via an automation called a bot, and we're going to make a new bot. And the bot has to have something to happen for it to trigger on. And so that's an event. We'll configure the event. The event is whenever we create a new project. You can see AppSheet will actually intelligently try and pick an action for you from what I've written in there. I'm just going to do it manually. So when we've got a new project created, the event source is an app, something's happening in the app. What's changing? The projects table. We're adding in a new project. What's the condition that we want? Well, in this instance, we don't need a condition. We're literally just waiting for any new project to be added. And then once we've got that new project added, then what we want to do is we need to add the next step. So we can see a new project being added. What's the next step? The next step is we want to be able to run a task. And the task we're going to run it's an actual app script. So you can call that whatever you want. I've just called it the name of my app script function. We're going to create a project folder. And when you click on that actual step, it should be a run a task. And what we want to do is call a script. So we're going to call a script. And this is where we need to add in our scripts. And so you click on the scripts where you want to add the script, and you can look in my drive. I've got a shared drive set aside for this purpose. You can go to your scripts, and there's the script I want to use. And this has got several functionings, which you'll see in a second. And what it will do is ask me what function I want to use. And so the function I want to use, you can see there's a few of them. We'll come to some of them later. Is create a project folder. And to create the project folder, let's go and actually look at that script so you can see what it's going to do in AppScript. I don't know how familiar any of you are with AppScript. That's quite small. I'm going to click slightly bigger for you so you can see it. So it's going to create a project folder. It needs a project name. And what it does is it creates the project folder inside an already existing folder. So if I go to my drive, this is my projects folder here, projects. And so it's going to make a subfolder in there for me. And so all I've done is I've hard-coded that folder ID in to get that particular folder. You might want to send that in from your app instead. So you could have another variable, say what is the parent folder, and you can do it that way. So it's another way of doing it. I've just hard-coded it for now. I've also made my life maybe potentially easier. It's going to look in that folder, the projects folder, for any subfolders that have already got the name, the project name. So it's not going to duplicate. What it'll do is if it finds that folder, it will give you that folder instead of actually making a new one. But if it doesn't, well, then it goes and creates the folder for me with the project name and sends back to me the ID. So that's how we're going to use that. So if we go back now to adding the script, so the project name is, we need to give it the project name, so we can pull that in. There we are, project name. And then the key is we want the return value. AppScript's going to do it for us. Go back to the script. It's going to return for us the ID of the project folder. And if it finds the folder, it returns the ID of the found folder. So either way, you're going to get back an ID. And so we want to use that. It's just a string. You've got different kind of values you can have. This is just a string and just an ordinary text value. That's what we need, but you can have other values as well. We'll look at one of those later. But it's a text value. And now we've got that, what we want to do in our next step is put that back into the app. So we're going to add another step. And the step we're going to add this time is we're going to add in, we're going to set the folder ID in AppSheet. So we'll say set the folder ID, do that step. And again, this folder ID, instead of it being running a task this time, we're actually going to run a data action. We're just going to manipulate the data that we've got in AppSheet. And so the data we're going to manipulate is we're going to set the folder ID to, now it used to be less obvious. If you go back to this step here, it will tell you that that's what you want to use there in your next step if you're going to use that information. They've actually made this easy now. You used to have to copy and paste that. Now, when we go to set the next step, we want the folder ID to be, here we are, we can just insert it, create the project folder step and the output of it. So that returned ID that we get from AppScript is going to get inserted into AppSheet for us as the folder ID. And that's it. That's all we should need to do. Let's give it a sensible name for the bot though. Here's the bot name. Create a new project folder. And what we'll do is save. So that's your first AppScript. It's doing something via AppScript, creating a drive folder for us in a particular parent folder, and then giving us back that ID. And because we set up the virtual column for the folder URL, it should show us it. So let's have a look at that actually in the app. So if we go into Project Phoenix here, for instance, what we need to do is we need to actually add a new one because it's only going to work on a new one at the moment. So we'll call it Project Galaxy. The person responsible will say it's me. And we don't necessarily need anything else. Let's put a status in. It's pending. There we go. Click on Save. And so you can see AppSheet is doing its sync. It's got one thing to sync. If we go and have a look at the actual Google Sheet, you can see their Project Galaxy is being added and in any moment, the folder ID should appear there. But again, it's a live demo. There you go. So the folder IDs come back from App Script, it's popped it in there. And then what we should see now, so if we go to Project Galaxy says the folder Project Galaxy is there. I can click on that. That's going to take me to Drive, and we'll see we've got the Project Galaxy inside our projects folder that we just wanted. So nice and simple, the most simple app script you could probably use for that. But now we can reuse that. Now we've got it. Now we can reuse it in interesting ways. I've now got my project tracker. I've got all these projects without a folder. I need to backfill them all. So let's go and backfill them all. And so the way that we backfill them, we can actually make a slice of the projects that we've got to say that need a folder. So we can do that first of all. Let's add a new slice. And the new slice we want to say is we need to be able to find all the ones that need a folder. So we'll call the slice needs a folder. And we need to say, well, what includes everything in that slice? Which one is it? Well, that's fairly easy. It's just if the folder is blank. So if the folder ID is blank, that's going to get included in that slice. And again, we're only using this slice to find things. We don't need to add or delete via this slice. We just need to be able to update the folder ID on these particular entries. So we'll just stick that to updates. And we'll save that. So now we've got the slice. So now we can make a bot to go and look in all of those projects that need a folder. And so we'll make a bot to do that. We'll create a new bot. The event this time is going to be a little different. The event this time is going to run every so often. We can make it a scheduled event. And in fact, you could leave it running all the time, but you could just disable it after you've done your initial backfill. So we'll check for missing project folder. And so this time the event source, instead of being the app, it's just going to run on a schedule. Monthly, you could set it hourly. It's up to you. You can set the time and date, etc. But what we want it to do is look at each row in the table and not the projects. Well, we could have done projects and put the filter condition there, but I've made a slice for it. So there we are. So I've got the needs folder project slice. So for every project that's listed in that slice, it's going to do something. Now, here's the bit where it gets handy, that we can reuse things. We don't need to add in the steps again. What we can do is we can go back to that previous one and we can turn on what's called linking. So when you turn on linking, it means you can then reuse this process somewhere else, because we want to do exactly the same thing. We want to go to the project folder, we want to set the folder ID. So if we go back to our new bot, instead of actually adding steps, we can say, use that process. So therefore, it's got the process. If you do this, these are linked. It literally says that, and it does give you the warning that if you change it in one of them, it changes in all of them. It's linked up, just as you would expect. So now that we've got that, what we could do, let's give it a sensible name. Let's backfill our project folders. Backfill our project folders. We'll click Save. Now what you'll see, because I haven't deployed this app yet, we get this warning at the top saying it's not going to run because it's not deployed, but we have the run button. So I can just do this manually. And so what we can do is we can just run it ourselves right now. We don't need to wait at all. So we can click on Run. You get the process in. And so what we should see is if we go over to the spreadsheet again, we should see that these folder IDs get filled in. And it's got a lot to do, so it may take a little bit of time. So if we flick between the two, yeah, we're still processing. Great. Folder ID is still not there. Is it still processing? It is. Make yourself a cup of tea. It's finished processing. We go back to the spreadsheet and what's this? It's only done one of them. Now this is kind of a bug and a feature. Now the reason why I say it's kind of a bug and a feature is because it's always been a feature. And so we've always coded around this for a while. But AppSheet has just been posting in the AppSheet community that they released a bug to fix a fix for this bug. And it didn't work. And so they have rolled it back. And so now it's the same feature and you need to still do your app in the same way. So it's a bug that they are saying they're no longer going to fix it. Well, not right now. And so what's happened is the script ran, no problem at all, but the what got returned to AppSheet was only one of them. It didn't bring back all of them. So if we go and have a look in our folder, we can refresh our folder here, and what you'll see is all the folders got created. They're all there, but it didn't come back and give it back into AppSheet. So what we need to do is we need to work around that. We need to do a two-stage bot, as it were, so two bots to do the one thing. And the way we'll do that is we'll make it so that you can actually manually make a folder as well, and then the bot can trigger that manual folder creation. So let's do it, show you how we would add that in to be able to add a folder one by one, and then we'll get the bot to do that for us. And so what we need is we need an action. And so to get the action, we're going to go to our actions, and in the projects, we're going to add the action to the project. And what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to make a request to create the folder, to create a folder request, and that's going to belong to projects. And what that's going to do for us is we want it to set the value of the folder ID to say, create the folder for us. So we're going to put in there the value, create the folder. And so this is going to give you two things. One is it's going to give you a button to do it yourself manually if you wanted to. So if I click on primary there, you'll see this button appears. It's got a long name and it's not got a very nice icon. So we'll change that. So we'll call the button, give it a sensible name, create folder. And then the icon, we'll give it one of the icons. There's a plus folder icon. Let's pop that in. There we go. So now you've got a nice button to be able to do it, and you've got nice text to be able to do it. But guess what? We don't want to be able to do it if we've already got the folder. We don't want to go making the folder again. So that's a behavior. And the behavior we want to do is we only want it to happen if the folder ID is blank again. So if we put that in, we can say, is blank the folder ID? And then that's when the button will be available. It'll be available only when the folder's blank. You could confirm it if you want and say, are you sure you want to do this? I don't think that's necessary in this particular instance, but that's our action. And so we can save that. Now what we can do is when the bot sees that we've updated the folders or added a new one, we can then get it to, when we want to backfill them, we can then get it to do this for us, and the other bot will work it out. So if we go back to the bots, we're going to backfill the projects. So this time, instead of using the process that we already had, we're going to make a new process. So this is going to be a separate process from the other. And all we're going to do in this process is we're going to reuse that action that we've just made. So we're going to say add a step, and the step that we want to do is we want to create the folder request. And this time, instead of running an action, instead of running a task, we're going to run a data action, and we're going to use that action we just made, create the folder request. So what this bot's going to do now for us is going to go and check everything that doesn't have a folder. It's going to set the folder ID to say create the folder for us. And then what we need to do is once it's done that, we want it to trigger the other bot. So if we go to say trigger the other bots, and what will happen is then it then knows it needs to create the folder for us. So when we save that, sorry, I missed a step out. When we set the action can't actually trigger app script. The action needs its own bot to be able to trigger the app script. And so what we need to do is make a bot for that. So this one's fine. We can save this one. And what this will do is it will trigger another bot when it sees those changes happen. But now we need to make the bot that we want to see happen when that create folder request comes in. So what we'll do is we'll make another new bot for ourselves. So we can add another bot. And this time the bot is going to be when we see a folder request, when someone clicks that button, or when that other bot triggers it, when it sees that folder request. And so what is that folder request? That is an update to projects, but the update is it's only when we see that has been create folder request has happened. So if I paste that in, you can see it's checking that this row before was blank. So it started off blank, and this row after is create the folder ID. So it's looking for the folder ID changing from being blank to create a folder. And that's the only time this bot gets triggered. So once that bot gets triggered, now we can reuse the process that we had before, because it's going to do the same thing. It's just going to make the folder for us. So we can say, reuse that process, and it's going to go and reuse that process for us. And then what we can do is we can give the bot a name, a sensible name. So we'll call it create the folder request. So now this bot we can run manually, and it will trigger the other bots, which is this bot, to make those folders for us. So if we click save, that's saved. So if we go now to our backfill, well, let's do two things. First of all, if we now go to our little project, we can go to any project that doesn't have a folder, and you can see there, you either get the link to the folder, or you can actually create a folder. So on Project Comet, we can click on create the folder for us. It switches to the link, but it hasn't finished syncing yet, so that's not got there. If we go to the project tracker, we can see Project Comet's gone to create folder. And then once the script's finished, it changes it to the folder ID. So if we now jump back to the app, we can see Project Comet has got its folder. We could go and check that it's got the folder, which it has. And we can also check, if we go and look at that parent folder, did it duplicate the folder? It hasn't. It found the folder that it got created in the previous step, and it's reused it. Now, obviously, you might want to create a new folder every time. You can code your app script to do that. That's entirely up to you. And that's just what I was going to do for this demo. So we can get rid of that now. But now we can go and tell our backfill bot to go and do all that for us, so we don't have to go and click the button for everyone that's empty. So if we now click on run this time, we've got the processing. If we go to the sheet, we should see they all get set to create folder, the ones that don't have a folder. And then as we go through, each one of these will get replaced with a unique ID. And they're coming through. And so AppScript is doing all this for us in the background. It would be creating new folders if they weren't there, but since they're already created in the previous step, it's just finding them and reporting them back to AppSheet. So now if we go back to the app, now we can see in any of these folders, we now have links to them, or we can look at it this way. If we've got the Project Phoenix, you've got it there. You can click on that folder and you'll have an empty folder in the right place. So that's pretty much how we do creating a folder, and the very simplest way of adding an app script into an app sheet. Did anyone have any questions on that? Is that all new to people? You let me know if you want.
I think Finton had a question, so
yeah,
I don't know whether or not this is a wise thing to do, to open the mic to Finton, because we might be here for the rest of the day, but we'll chance it.
I don't know, whatever you mean, Paul.
That is so unfair. It won't be the rest of the day, but the rest of the week.
Well, in fact, before we jump into that, we're going to lose the LinkedIn guys. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn, I think there's a few people over there. Join the community. There'll be links on this LinkedIn event to tell you how to join the community. We then continue the discussion in the community live.
More demos to come if you still want LinkedIn to see them.
They can go if they want to see those or more demos. Then they're going to have to join the community. So yeah. Anyway, Finton, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, no worries. It was just kind of a general question, Steve, for yourself. Where do you kind of find the boundaries of AppSheet, and how do you kind of decide, oh, I need a script for this? Do you know what I mean? Is it like you hit a blocker and you're like, you know, like say like could you have done this without AppScript or only an AppSheet? Or
no. Yeah, no, AppSheet doesn't have any concept of creating a folder in Drive. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't have anything like that. It can make, for instance, do a mail merge to do PDF. So kind of looking at Chuck's question there, can you create new files from a doc sheet or a template? You could use AppScript to do that. Yes, absolutely. So again, AppSheet wasn't Google. It was bought in by Google, and so therefore it's not very googly sometimes, which we'll come on to in a second. And so it has to be able to work across different platforms. So for instance, you can use AppSheet with Microsoft 365, and you can have that adding things to SharePoint instead of Drive. And so it works in a fashion that can do it that way. So Google added in the ability to add in AppScript to do whatever AppScript can do. You can get AppScript to do that. So yeah, if you come to something that AppSheet can't do, for instance, some processing it won't be able to work out, or for instance, just literally a function it can't do. If you wanted to make a spreadsheet for you from a Google Sheet, then you can use script.
That's when you tend to jump to app script. Yeah,
that's right.
That's what I figured.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Talking about the bug and a feature thing as well, I had to laugh at that because I was remembering back to the old Postini days when it kept all the mail, and that was considered a bug / a feature. I was like, that's very Google.
Postini days. That's a long time ago.
And it's gone away.
I gave the same thumbs up for that as well, Fenton. So when Stephen said it.
Yeah, bug and a feature. Bug and a feature.
Yeah, it was
Thanks,
interesting. They tried to fix it. Yeah, they tried to fix it, and then it was like this. Lots of people complained because it wasn't working, and so they've rolled it back and said, "No, you just have to keep doing it the old way."
I think there was a few things in sites you'd seen with that as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Feature.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a folder. That's great. What about files? And so AppSheet can do files, and AppSheet will store them in your drive, but not necessarily where you'd like them. And so what we'll do is we'll go over to our sheet. You can see in my sheet, I've added in a files tab ready to go to AppSheet. It's just got some simple things. It's got an ID, a project we want to connect it to, a name for the file itself. That's what you'll need to upload to AppSheet. And then I've preemptively put a file ID in because I'm obviously wanting to do it a bit more of a googly way rather than just purely the AppSheet way. Okay, so if we go over now to the AppSheet editor, we want to add in my table files, and we're going to allow updates and adds, etc. And so we'll add that in. And so AppSheet will add that in from the Google Sheet. So it's got it as a reference as a table in AppSheet. So there we go, got the files. And we just need to make sure that some of the things are set correctly. So for instance, project is going to be a reference to our project. So we're going to change that to a reference, and we're going to say we need that to be on projects. So we'll do that. And file ID, a file, it's automatically found as a file for us. That's great. But file ID, it also thinks it's a file as well. But we just want that to be text like we did last time, because it's just going to be the text ID back from Google Drive. So we've got that there. So for the moment, we'll click on Save on there. And what I'll do is I'll show you how AppSheet does files. And so we'll go back to the project, and we should see now on the bottom of, oh, we know we need to add it in. So let's go back and do that. If we go to the views, we now need to say we want to be able to see our files. So if we go, we can add in related files. There we go. So now we can see in our details view the related files. So if we go back to our demo, this should do a little refresh for us. And we should now see we've got the ability to add in files. So let's go to the project, Project Phoenix, there, related files. Click on Add. And we haven't made any changes to the files or anything. So obviously we can see the ID here. We can see the file ID. We could hide those because we're not going to want to use them day to day. We're going to reuse the file ID for something else. But let's show you what happens when you add a file. And so you can click on the file here, and I'll go and pick some files from my file system. So there it is. And what I've done in the background there while I was doing that, I actually copied the file name, because AppSheet does not retain the file name of the file. It puts it into the file system with some unique identifiers so it can try and find it again. So let's show you exactly how that works. So if I click on Save, that's going to do the upload. You can see it's here, got the name, got its random ID. That will click and you can go and see the file, and we can see it's attached to Project Phoenix. No file ID at the minute. We're going to get AppScript to fill that in for us. But if we actually look in here, you can see you get this absolutely hideous monstrosity there as something that's supposed to be a reference to a file. And what you can see is in my drive, there is a files_images folder, which is in the right place for AppSheet to find. And then in there, it's added in the ID of the file. It's called it file as well, because that was the column name I gave it. And then that's a random timestamp, well, not a random timestamp, it's a timestamp of when it went up in UTC, GMT time. And then obviously it's a .png. Now, I think most of you agree, that's not very googly. And what do you mean file paths? We don't have file paths in Google. It's just URLs in Drive. And so what we can do is we can use that to help us find where the file actually is in Drive and do something with it. So that's our next step. So we'll go back to the app. And in our data, what we'll do is we want to get back the URL for the file. So we'll add that into this table here as a virtual column, because we're going to use that. So we're going to have a file URL. And again, the formula for that, I've got it copied and pasted so I don't have to write it. Let me just grab that for you. And we'll pop it in. There we go. And so what they're doing, again, it's checking that there's got to be a file ID. If there's a file ID, it's going to give you a hyperlink using the name and the URL it'll generate from the drive. But if there's no file ID, it just leaves it empty. Simple as that. So we'll click on save. Again, we want it to be our URL. It's found that automatically. We want it to launch externally. We want it to be a hyperlink. And then we'll give it a sensible name for its display name. File on drive. Again, you can call it whatever you want. We've done that one. Let's save that. Now we need to go back to adding in a script. And again, a script can only be activated through a bot. So we're going to need to add a bot. And so what we want to do now is we just want to look for a new event. And the event is when a new project file's added. So we'll create the new event. Again, it's going to happen in the app. We're going to look at the files. And this time we're just going to look at ads. Condition doesn't have to be a condition. We'd want this to happen whenever you add a new file. No difference from any other. And then what we're going to do this time is we're going to add a step. And this again is going to be an app script step. So we'll give it a name, get file ID. This should be run a task. We want to call the script. Again, we want to select our script. So you can go to where you've got your script. Scripts. Same script as before. We're just going to use another function within that script. And the function we're going to use this time is get file ID. And you can see this time, it's asking for a few more variables. Let's go and have a quick look at that script so you can see it here. Let's look at files, just so you can get an idea of what it's doing. So it wants a file name, it wants a new name, because guess what? I'm going to rename it to the actual file name we uploaded with, or whatever you put in that box, that's up to you. And obviously we want it to go into the right place. It's going to go into the folder for that particular project. And we've just got some guard clauses in, so if it can't find, if you haven't given it a file name, it will say it comes back with no file name. It then looks for the file. So this time it's looking for all of the files with that particular file name. And hopefully it should only find one. But the way that Google Apps Script does Drive is it always gives you search results. It gives you more than one. And so you say, I want the file. You look in your files that you search for. If there's a next file, if it's got one, then give me that first file that you've got. Otherwise, you've got nothing. If the file's null, we come back and say just the file wasn't found. But if it wasn't, it carries on. Now you can see I've put in some commented out code here because there's different ways you could do this if you want to. For instance, we could just immediately set the name of the file name. Now, the issue with setting the name of the file name is that AppSheet won't be able to find it anymore because it won't be following this format. If we go and rename it, it's not going to have this name, so it's not going to find it. So what I decided to do in the script instead is I'm actually going to move the file. I'm going to copy the file to somewhere else. And so I've got it in the right folder. The original file's where it was. This one isn't. It's going to be somewhere else. So you can see there, it's ensuring I've got the target folder. It's then say we're going to move the file by making a copy of the file. When we make a copy of the file, we're going to give it that new name and it's going to drop it into our target folder. And then what it'll do is it will return the ID again. So that we get the ID back of that new file, which is we called it move file. It's actually a new file because it's got to be made via a copy. Okay. So let's just fill those bits in that we need. So we've got the get file ID. What do we want as the file name? Well, the file name we haven't got. The file name has got this weird and wonderful thing there. So let's go and add in to AppSheet the ability to get the file name that we need because it's not going to understand the path. So the first thing I want to do, add a virtual column. And the virtual column I want to add is the ability to split the what we have in the file column into several different bits so we can actually see what it is. So what we'll do, we'll call that the file path list. I'm going to make a list from that particular information. And the way I'm going to make the list is I'm going to take what's in the file column as text. So there we are, we've got the file. I want to take it as text, and then I'm just going to split it where there's a /. And so that means it's going to get out the file path in one part of it, and then the file name in the last part of it. And so if I click on test, you'll see I've got one answer. And you can see some. So it's got file images as one bit, comma, and then the actual file name as the next bit. That's exactly what I want. But from that, I want to extract the actual file name. So if I click on done there, I'm going to add another column, virtual column, to make the file name for myself. So we're going to have the file name, and that's just going to extract from that list the last thing on the list, the last item of the list, which is going to be the actual file name. So you can see I've got the file path list, and I say, well, whatever's the last thing, the count of the file path list is going to be the same number. Give me that instead. So if I click on test on that one, live demo always fails. So what I've forgot to do there is save it on the previous step. So if I save it on the previous step, we've got that saved now. So if I now go and test that formula again, this time you should see there, I've got just the file name. Great, that's what I want to pass to App Script so it can go and try and find it. So let's go back to setting up that App Script. Go to the bot. So the file name, now we want it to actually be file name. We can pop that in there nice and easily. The new name, I'm going to give it the name that I typed in. So it doesn't have to be the actual file name. You can put whatever name you like in there. And then the target folder ID, well, we want to get that from the project, from the folder ID we've got there. So we can see we've got projects there, and then we've got folder ID. So we can pop that in. So it means it's going to be attached to the project because we've got to put a project in for the file, and it's going to be in that project folder. And again, we want the return value. The return value this time, again, it's just string, just a text. And then the next step we want to have is we want to obviously update AppSheet with that particular file ID. And so we'll add a step in there. And this time, instead of setting the folder ID, we're going to set the file ID. And to run a task, it's not run a task, it's run a data action. And again, this time we're going to set the row values. We're going to set, I'm on the wrong, let me go back a step. I'm editing the wrong one. That's no good. Let's delete this one. Go back to where I'm supposed to be editing. There we are. So the file ID is going to give us back the text from the app script. So let's set the file ID here. It's better. And it's not running a task, it's running the data action. We're going to set the row values, and this time we're setting the file ID to be the output of our app script. There we go. And that's all we should need to do. So we upload a file, the app script runs, it goes and finds it in Drive, it gives us back the ID, and because we've added in to our files, that we've got the file name, we've got the file URL, we want to be able to see them in the app as well, and they'll come in automatically. And so if I click on save, our little demo is reloading. There we go. And so again, now on Project Phoenix, we can see we haven't got the file ID on this one because this was there before we uploaded the script and added it on. So now what we'll do is I'll add a file again. And so we'll go and pick my file. There we are. We'll click on save. And again, AppScript in the background is going to do its magic. So if we go and actually look at that table, we'll see you should get a new row in, and the file ID will be blank. AppScript's running in the background. File ID should get filled in. There it is. And then if we go back to the app, we can see it's got us the open URL. If I click that, that's going to give you the standard Drive view of the file. And there it goes. And just as a little aside, have any of you tried Nano Banana yet? Does anyone even know what Nano Banana is? Nano Banana is...
Know it and
Gemini.
love it. Sorry, I was trying to get to the thing. But it
Yeah.
does, Stephen, I will tell you, engineers should never be allowed to name anything. Google, with Bard to Gemini, to all the products named Gemini, to all the agent space. Now we have workspace flows having to be renamed because there's flow. By the way, and Nano Banana is the image editing tool built into Gemini. It's amazing. But as a question here, anybody else here familiar with the fact that there is Google Workspaces?
Yeah.
So if you go into Drive, you have Workspaces. Yeah. Anyway, don't let them name anything.
Workspace Inception. Workspace Inception.
Yeah, the workspace is inside of it. Yes. Nano Banana. I have no idea who the hell let them name that. So.
But Google, Kev, you go around that Google's favorite thing to do is to rename things. So
I thought it was to kill them and put them in the graveyard, but hey, that could be just me being bitter about some things. So.
Put them in the Google graveyard. Well, that too.
Have you ever seen killedbygoogle.com? If you haven't, it's a troll down memory lane.
So just to give you an example of what it can do, I've uploaded the same image twice. Let me upload another image for you. So this is an image that's been manipulated by Nano Banana. If I go and pick my other image, which is the original image, so I'll just pick that, copy that one, which was a balcony overlooking the Portugal harbour. If I click on save on that one, before AppSheet has finished doing its thing with AppScript, you could go and have a look at the file anyway. And what you'll see is sometimes AppSheet takes a while to work. So it didn't work the first time. Let's try it the second time. Hasn't worked the second time. Maybe even it'll work quicker with Drive. It might work quicker with Drive. There we go. So this is the harbour. This is the original photo of which you can see is the harbour in Portugal. And what I told it to do was replace the view from the balcony with a review of Reykjavik in Iceland, but keep the reflections in the glass. And I can't understand how it does it. It's kept the reflections in the glass and replaced it with, that isn't Reykjavik, I've been to Reykjavik, but that's definitely the cathedral in Reykjavik in the wrong place. But yeah, it's amazing. Fire away, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to say, just as a non-programming kind of note that some of the low-code people might appreciate, you can actually go to Gemini.google.com, the general app. You can drag an image over to the prompt, and you can say things like, change the background in this image and stuff like that now, or add text, or add our logo from this file to this image and stuff like that. So that's also some of the things that Nano Banana lets you do. And in particular, like, for example, let's say you tell it to do something like create a picture of a squirrel, and then you say something like add a hat to the squirrel. It now will not regenerate the squirrel picture again. If anybody here is used to where, like if you gave additional commands, it would be regenerating the original image just over and over again to meet your final prompt. That's what Nano Banana does. And you can do things like add text to it. So yeah. Stupid name, no idea why it's called Nano Banana either. So
yeah, so that's,
but it is amazing, and yes, I'm as amazed as you are about things like keeping that reflection in the glass.
Yeah, it's really clever.
It does sound like we need a Nano Banana session in October where you bring your own picture and do the wildest and craziest thing with your own picture, and maybe just we can experiment with how good it is. I've done the entire family, and send them back to the future.
As part of my Gemini training, I actually do an exercise where I tell people to do the following. I tell them to create a music album cover, and awesome. And to do what their favorite band or a fictitious band or something like that. And so, like, I almost always do one with my cat and tell it to do a picture. And so I've gotten like some really cool stuff. But yeah, the users love that kind of stuff to play with it. It really gets their ideas flowing and whatnot to make crazy photos.
Okay, so if we look at our folder, it's put it in the right place, and I now have one more demo left if you want me to do it and try and squeeze it in. We good with that? No worries, Kevin. It's great. great to talk. But you can see it's renamed the files like we wanted it to, and you can see it hasn't got a .png because Drive doesn't care about that. You can include it if you want to, but it still sees them as photos. You still get the little overview there. So that's in the right place in Drive. So the final one is, well, yes, great. We can do things that we can do in Google. What about things we can do outside of Google? You can call an API. Now, the API I'm going to call is the Gemini API, just because that's what we've been working on recently. But that could be any API you like. And so let me try and quickly run through this for you. So let's imagine in our projects, we're going to add some new data into our project. And let me put the size down a bit so I can see a bit easier. We're going to add in a website. And we're going to get a summary for that website. And so we're going to stick that into our AppSheet app projects, and we'll regenerate, and that'll pop in those two new folders, two new columns for us. There we go. So we've now got website. It's picked that as a URL. Great. That's what I want. Summary text. Now, this is another feature I'm going to show you of AppSheet, which is just handy. Is we're going to make it a long text instead. And the long text has another ability if you go and turn on some of the preview features of apps. So if we go into the settings, views, and general, you can preview new features. Okay. And the preview new feature that we want to use on summary is you can have HTML formatting or Markdown formatting. I'm going to use Markdown in this example. You'll see why in a second. So we're going to have that as a feature there. And then what we're going to do is now again we need to add a bot, and so the bot is going to go and talk to Gemini for us. So let's go to the bots, and the bot we're going to add this time is we're going to say whenever we add or change the project website, we're going to then get Gemini to give us a summary of the website for us. So the project website's been updated. That's the event we're going to look for. And so again, that's an app event. This time we're going to look at projects. We're going to look at just when a project is updated. You could potentially change it so that when you add a new project as well, it'll do it too. But the way I've done this one, it's just doing it this way. And this time, the condition we're going to look for is we just want to check that A, we've been given a website. It's not blank. We don't want it to be blank. And B, it's different from when it was before. So if it's going blank to something, that's great. Or if it goes too blank, it's not going to work, which is exactly what we want, because we don't want to send nothing. So the step we're going to add, we've seen me do this a few times now, creating a new step, we're going to call the script. The script we're going to call is in my script file. You've seen me pick it a couple of times now. So we'll quickly run through that. And unimaginatively, I have called it summarize website. There we go. It's going to take in a URL. As you can imagine, that's going to be our website. Insert that. Again, we're going to get something back. This time, we're going to get back some long text, which is why I set it to long text. And if we go and have a quick look at the script, so let me make this slightly smaller. There we go. So it's going to take the URL. We're going to set a maximum number of characters, so it'll extract from that. I've got a helper function to basically AppScript goes off and reads the website, gets it as HTML, and passes it to Gemini. The instructions for Gemini is create a summary of the organization from the HTML provided for the website. We pop in its URL as well. Tell us what kind of organization it is. If you can work out the address of the headquarters, do that. Don't mention that you've looked at any HTML or anything like that. And finally, format the responses in Markdown. And so you're going to see how that's going to work in AppSheet. Temperature, that's just so you can say how creative you want it to be. The smaller, the less creative. And then we pass that off to our little Gemini function I've got in the back end there. And so that's going to go off and do that for us. So that's what the script does. So we're going to get back that Markdown text. And as you can imagine, we're going to add that back into our AppSheet table. And so let's just do that. We're going to set the summary. Set the summary. Again, this is going to be a data task. It's going to be setting the rows. It's going to be setting the summary to whatever we get back from our AppScript function. There we go. Okay. And that should be it. So if I now click save, well, the other thing I need to do is we need to be able to see that actually in the view. So if we go to the view, we'll add in at the top. We want the website, we want the summary, and we want to be able to edit the website easily. So let's add that as a quick edit. So it means you don't have to click on the edit button, you can just edit it straight in the detail view there. So if we click on save, that's going to do a little refresh for us. We're looking at Project Phoenix. So I found a Project Phoenix on the internet. There it is. And so that's automatically saving for us. It's going off to App Script, who's loading up the website, taking its HTML, sending it to Gemini, giving us it back here. And then that should appear the summary. There we go. Project Phoenix is a UK-based organization dedicated to ending animal exploitation. So that could be an API for anything. I picked the Gemini API, but that could be an API to talk to other apps that you have that you want to get information from, whatever it is you want to do. So that's pretty much the end of the demo. Any questions? Fire away.
Let's have a look. Any further questions in the? No, there's just Finton's. Let me just correct. Go on, Finton.
I'm being polite. Yeah, I might have missed this, Steve, because I had to take a phone call, a customer phone call in between. What kind of stuff have you ended up implementing this for within the business? What's the kind of areas you've tended to use it for? And apologies if you already covered this.
No, I didn't mention that. So, for instance, this example of summarizing a website, we do that with our leads. So when we get a cold lead in, obviously the person submits the website and we could go and read it. But while the system is actually processing the lead, it talks to Gemini and brings in a summary of the website so we can get an idea of what they do, where they're based, because a lot of our clients are in the US. And so it helps us get a heads up on who they are before we've even started. So that's one thing. Other things that we use the API for, again, AppSheet has just added in the ability
or
to
even with AppSheet in general, just for people to kind of get ideas.
Yeah. So we've got our ticketing system. So our ticketing system runs on AppSheet, and we have a big app that we call the Oracle, and so everything goes into there. So that is our CRM. It's our ticketing system. It manages all our tasks. We record all of our time in there against projects, and so we use App Script the other way around. So we have an App Script reading our Gmail for tickets, and it puts the ticket update into AppSheet. So using the AppSheet API via App Script the backwards way.
The other way around.
Yeah, there is a feature being rolled out by AppSheet which can read your Gmail and do all that bit for you, but at the minute it still isn't working. So we're waiting for a fix on that, which is a shame. But and we also use the App Script to talk to APIs for AppSheet to AppSheet as well. So say for instance we can make a public form in AppSheet which can look at the AppSheet app and change things dynamically as people are filling in the public form, but we don't want them to see the rest of the app. And so that's actually a separate app in AppSheet. And so when someone fills in the public form, it runs an App Script to talk to the other AppSheet, say someone's just updated it, so it'll get a notification or whatever we want. So that's where we use that a lot. But a lot of things to do with Drive, we use that a lot if we want Gemini to give us a hand. So for instance, again, our leads will sometimes come in from one email address, but that's not actually their website address, and it's hard to find sometimes. And so we get Gemini to do a little grounded search to see if it can find the website for them. So that's some of the places that we've used it.
Cool. And any interesting projects with customers on AppSheet, or?
Yeah, so we've been working.
What's your most intriguing one?
The most intriguing one, which involved AppScript as well, was an organization, a clinic in the US that looks after children with autism. And so it's like they go to school. And what they wanted to be able to do was to give the parents photographs throughout the day of the kids being in school. And so what we made for them was an AppSheet app so they can use on the phone, they can take the photo, it goes into the app, it then puts that in the appropriate folder shared with the parents of the child, so they can have that as an archive, but then also sticks it in an email to them so they can get an email pop up straight away with the photo embedded. So that's one thing we do there. Another thing, completely opposite end of the spectrum, is we're working with an automotive repair facility in the US, and so they go do all the electronic repairs on the car. And so what they do is they take photos, they put them in the app, they put the VIN number in, which talks to an external API to bring back what the make and model of the car is. AppSheet has the ability to scan the VINs as well, so you can just scan the VIN. You don't even need to type it in, and so it goes back and pulls back that information for them. Yeah, and then that generates them a pro forma invoice and as a PDF file, just using the AppSheet functionality. But then it's going to use AppScript to push it into their actual accounting system to create the actual invoice to send out to the customer. So yeah, they're just a couple of things that we're doing at the moment.
That's a nice one. There's a bit 2 or 3 different things along that lead, which is kind of.
And plus it can do, lots of people, when they see it using Google Sheets, they think it can't be very big. But you can also use Cloud SQL databases as well. So we're working with a hospital. They have got they track the actual physical medical records in a system that we're replacing for them with AppSheet. And that's got 2.8 million records. So we're using a Cloud SQL database to store the records and use AppSheet to just selectively show what they need to see at the time, so it doesn't get bogged down. And so then they can use the app to track if they've destroyed them, if they've archived them off to a data holding facility. And so yeah, all kinds of different apps doing very different things. Yeah.
And Stephen, regarding the sheets, and you just mentioned the SQL, Cloud SQL, within AppSheet there is database functionality, correct?
Right. Yes.
I mean, could you use that? Is that
yes, you can.
Certainly more robust than a spreadsheet, but maybe not as robust as Cloud SQL. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty good. So the AppSheet database is basically if you've ever used Google Tables, that's where it came from. So that's where AppSheet databases came from. It was Google Tables. It was only available in the US. And so basically they rebranded it and made it AppSheet databases instead. And so yes, if you are an enterprise customer, you can talk to support and they will give you AppSheet databases that will go up to 1 million rows. So if you need more than just the 10 million cells that you get in a Google Sheet, you could do it in an AppSheet database with 1 million rows, and they could be like obviously 20, 30, 40 columns wide. And so you've got a lot more data in there. So yeah, that's what the AppSheet databases are. The other advantage of the AppSheet database is you can actually look at that directly, and it's a bit more like, it's not quite a spreadsheet, but it's more functionality of around a database, so you can use that quite nicely. And AppSheet can see changes to the database. So like I mentioned, you could use the AppSheet API to bridge 2 apps together. If you're using AppSheet databases, one app could update the database, and the other app can see that database has been updated and show you that instantaneously without having to do any API calls, for instance, between them. So that's another way of doing it. Yeah. So
when you're talking to these clients, is there a cost benefit in going down the AppSheet route versus just bespoke development? And at what point would you recommend somebody looks at bespoke development for an application versus AppSheet? Obviously, the hospital scenario, they're dealing with patient record data. You've got HIPAA compliance, all those kind of regulations come into play that may lean one way or the other. So I'll just kind of get your thoughts on how that would be done. So the irony of that hospital situation is that it is a custom development that they have right now. The issue is it was made many years ago, and the actual developers of it, they've all died. And so there's nobody supporting it. They don't know how to use it or what to do with it. It's sat on an old Windows Server 2008 because it needs to be 32-bit.
Wow.
So that's why we're replacing it with AppSheet. So yeah, what about why would we even suggest AppSheet? Well, number one is they're Google Workspace customers. So the license is either free or heavily subsidized if you need enterprise, which they will do because they need the bigger Cloud SQL database. And they can stay within Google. They've already accepted the fact that they've got HIPAA compliance with Google. And so therefore the Google Cloud SQL database, it's already sorted. The app itself, it's just part of your workspace. You don't need to look at anything else. So that's a huge plus for anyone. And then when you need to go to bespoke development, when you go beyond what AppSheet can do, which is mainly, you're probably going to hit data limits if you can't get your data filtered enough for AppSheet to be able to work with it. So these 2.8 million records, the way we're working it is you pick a patient, first of all, that you're looking for, and then it only loads up the records for that particular patient. So therefore, it's not trying to handle all 2.8 million in one go. This so
I did wonder about that.
yeah. That's how you cleverly have to horizontally scale your app, as it were. So you go through
basically filtering.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah.
you had a question?
No, it's just to answer that I know, being on previous sort of AppSheet training from Google, the steer from them is that it's not necessarily just for one or two apps. It's for organizations who have got a lot of legacy apps built on a lot of different code, a lot of different platforms, and it gives the opportunity. They're the target customers to go for. So like Airbus is the the example that they always give. They've got thousands of apps that they need to re-platform, and they use AppSheet. So there's a compromise on maybe some of the functionality against the sort of a high code platform, but it also allows you to have a standard underlying platform and then put a governance layer on top of that. And it'd be good actually to fish out from Google some of the presentations from Airbus on that they gave a steer on how they go through a project for a new app, as it were. They limit the testing period, they limit the amount of people who can use it. Goes through very strict gates to actually get deployed out, rather than just let the business have it and let them create whatever.
Millions of apps. Yeah, I think that's the danger. I think one of the things that maybe someone who's done this in an enterprise could probably come on and talk to, which is the governance layer, because I think we all can cast our minds back to things like Lotus Notes and other low-code applications where the business was allowed to do whatever, and there was duplication of applications and duplication of functions where someone would write a particular app in Notes that would do something, and then somebody else would do something similar without actually communicating. So I think there is that level of governance that needs to be done in an organization when it comes to deploying and implementing things like AppSheet. But I think it looks hugely powerful. I think even from a project management perspective, just the ability to create folders and copy templates and all those kind of things to kick a project off, and all the communications that could automatically be sent out based on a project. If you imagine doing a migration project that Finton and Dolan will be doing on a regular basis, and to do that, you've got all the documentation that you're doing, all the communications that could just be done with a click of a button. So that for me is could potentially be a game changer. Back to Sean.
Yeah, just one of the features that Gemini, Finton, one of the features Gemini, and again, I don't know if it's been rolled out or it's definitely a sort of roadmap item, is from an accessibility point of view for frontline workers. And I know frontline haven't got like the full Gemini thing, but if you're a warehouse worker and you can use it to take pictures, the example Stephen gave about the VIN numbers, Gemini can extract information from a picture, an image that's taken, and populate a structured database field, rather than the end user having to sort of tap it in on a tablet or a phone, because AppSheet was developed initially for frontline workers for mobile applications. But if you've got someone who has got difficulty seeing the screen or tapping in on a mobile or a tablet, the Gemini element opens up that for using AppSheet. So again, there's organizations may want to change their license, the Workspace license SKU, to be able to support Gemini for those frontline workers.
Yeah, that's rolled out now, so that's available now. You've got to be an enterprise license on AppSheet, but yeah, it's called AI tasks, and yeah, you can drop in a PDF or an image, and you can do things with them, extract data, get sentiment analysis, that kind of stuff. One of the things just you said, Paul, the showstopper, I would imagine, for AppSheet is it's not real time. If you need real time data going backwards and forwards with all the users, AppSheet doesn't do that. It's very much a client syncing to the server, and then that needs to sync to the database, and then that will get back to the other users as well. So yeah, real time is where you'll fail. And going back to Chuck's question about doing templates, we did another AppSheet project for a large search provider who'll remain nameless, where they couldn't use the AppSheet PDF creation functionality because they were making documents that needed sections removed or added or what they needed in. So we had to do that by AppScript. So we were doing AppScript into a Google Doc, taking the bits out and adding the bits in they don't need, then generating it as a PDF, rather than using the app script, the app sheet ability to do a merge.
Cool. I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you very much. Any further questions before we kind of wrap this? I know it's gone slightly over by a couple of minutes, so apologies if anyone's had to crash the meeting at the end. But yeah, any further last minute questions? 3, 2, 1. No. Okay. That just goes to thanks, Stephen, for his fantastic presentation again. Probably do one in another 3 or 4 months' time. Just I can imagine with more feedback that we get from the community. The community is you guys. It's providing us with suggestions, ideas. If you want to do a session, please ping myself, ping Molly. We can always fit you in. We've got not next week, the week after, the 18th of September, same time, 4 p.m. UK time. We've got Liam from DPD, and he's going to be talking about how they moved from legacy telephony into Google Voice. So I can see that one being quite an interesting one for organizations who have looked at Google Voice or are not quite sure what Google Voice is. He will be able to describe how a large enterprise multinational organization dropped their desk phones and moved to an online solution with Google. So with that, I'd like to close this out by thanking everybody and speak to you on the next one. Take care, guys. Cheers for now.